Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to cover Fox News a little bit. It's going to be part one of my Fox News mini series. Today's video is going to be a lot more opinion, no legalese like some of my previous videos, I promise. Tonight I had other things I sort of wanted to talk about. I had a logical progression for how I wanted to talk about Fox News, but sort of got blown up last night. There was an interview between Tucker Carlson and Michael Avenatti. For those of you that don't know, Michael Avenatti is Stormy Daniels' personal attorney. Stormy Daniels is a adult film actress or former adult film actress who had an extramarital affair with Trump over 10 years ago that Trump and Michael Cohen, his fixer, subsequently tried to cover up. And this ended up with Cohen actually getting charged for campaign finance violations, which I will discuss a little bit further later in the video. But pretty much, I just had to get on here and make a quick video to really talk about Carlson's hypocrisy, intellectual dishonesty, just all of the above. It really stunned me, even for Fox News, which has gone lower than low with some of their opinion show hosts, especially. And yeah, that's what I want to talk about. So before I dive into the Fox News Carlson Avenatti interview, I'd like to talk a little bit about Carlson and something that happened previously with him. He used to host, or co host, I should say, a debate show on CNN, and he had this co host who was supposedly a liberal, and Carlson was the conservative, and they would sort of go back and forth on different issues. And it had this reputation as being sort of clickbait, but for television. And so in 2004, Crossfire, Carlson and his co-host, of course, they had Jon Stewart on, and Jon Stewart, as many people know, is a very smart guy, especially for a comedian, for someone who doesn't claim to be a Rhodes Scholar, doesn't claim to be the smartest guy in the room. So, of course, 2004 being an election year, John Kerry versus George W. Bush, they had Jon Stewart come on to the show, and essentially Stewart roasted Carlson and his co-host. He he exposed the show for not being intellectually honest, or at least that was his assertion, and that's the point that he sort of continued to drive home throughout this whole interview on Crossfire. And Stewart was making the point that keep in mind we're back in 2004. It's an election year. Stewart was making the point that the public needed people on serious news networks to have good faith, intellectual, fact-based debates and not to just go for whatever is going to get the highest ratings because of course, there was a high stakes election coming up. It's for the chief executive of the United States government. Um, so Tucker was still Tucker back then. Tried the same jerk off moves that he always does. He tried to talk over, he tried to interrupt, tried to change the subject, and pretty much Stewart shut him down. And back then, it seemed there was a different audience that they were speaking to from this program, but really it was different times for our country. If you acted like an idiot on uh, a serious network, you didn't last. People were held to different standards. Clearly, that's gone out the window the past few years, especially and mostly with Fox News when it comes to mainstream channels. But you know, Carlson goes on this diatribe that Stewart, Stewart had the Daily Show that Trevor Noah hosts now, and he goes on this diatribe about how, oh, you had Kerry on and you went easy on him. You asked him softball questions. And Stewart essentially looks at Carlson and says, dude, the show leading into mine is puppets making prank calls. I mean, for goodness sakes. I mean, it's Comedy Central. I'm a comedian. And he makes that point, and there was no way for Carlson to refute it. He tried to keep going back, or why'd you let him off? Why'd you let him off so easy with your questions? And Stewart just made a mockery of him, essentially. So, as I said, people were seemingly held to higher standards back then compared to now. And Crossfire, it was canceled shortly thereafter because Stewart came on and exposed it for what it was. It was a joke just to drive ratings. It was two low minded, or I should say, not very intellectually honest people beating their hands on the table trying to drive ratings. And Stewart exposed that, and they were canceled. So now let's shift focus to the interview that aired on Fox News between Carlson and Michael Avenatti. So at the start, Carlson says, I don't want to engage in any name calling. We've been doing that to each other through the media. I don't want to engage in it. And almost immediately after, a banner comes up underneath Avenatti and Carlson that says, Tucker squares off against creepy porn lawyer. Creepy porn lawyer. So right off the bat, this guy should not be taken seriously. He says he doesn't want name calling, and yet here we are. Creepy porn lawyer on a mainstream news network. And essentially, this guy's just a troll. It's very clear, at least to me. And then he opens their discussion, if you could call it that. He opens their discussion with video of political comments made by Avenatti at a rally in Iowa. Because Avenatti's been involved in Democratic politics for a long time, even though he's mostly known for representing Stormy Daniels. And, off the bat, Avenatti claims, he was invited onto the show to talk about Stormy, his case, and that was it. And I would tend to believe Avenatti. He seems to be a straight shooter, where Carlson lies and distorts for a living, and is debunked by fact checkers all the time. So off the bat, dishonesty and spin. He's trying to catch Avenatti off guard. And so the political comment that Avenatti made was, it was a video from Avenatti. As I said, he's at a rally in Iowa, and he says what Russia did in the 2016 elections was tantamount or equal or somewhere in the realm of Russia putting troops on our border. And, clearly the intent here from Tucker is he wants to make Mr. Avenatti seem like he's over dramatic. Like some Twitter trolls, it does not mean actual warfare. And, it might have been hyperbole, what Avenatti claimed, but it wasn't so much. And taken in context, it makes a lot of sense. In the 21st century, we have different ways of waging war. And this was information warfare, a propaganda campaign that was deliberately carried out by Putin and the Kremlin. So, here he is. Carlson invites this guy on. He says he wants to talk about Stormy and his case, and right off the bat, he's taking an out of context quote, or he's taking a quote and putting spin on it And that just shows, Tucker loves to omit facts and ignore context. Um, you know, Carlson goes on and he accuses Avenatti of reckless rhetoric from what he said about it being like Russian troops being on our border. And my first thought was, what about the president? I mean, so here he's doing almost the same thing that he did with Jon Stewart. He's taking a comedian or a lawyer and he's putting them up on this pedestal like they're the literal president of the United States. But yet, what of the actual president of the United States? Reckless rhetoric on Russia. Let's get along with Russia. I don't trust the intelligence community. Maybe it was a 400-pound person on their bed randomly somewhere that did these hackings. I mean, for goodness sakes, this is the guy that's supposed to be defending us against these cyber attacks and has, and there's people getting murdered in England in connection to the Kremlin and he won't speak up about it. So it's pretty ironic that this creepy porn lawyer, Tucker wants to hold to these super high standards. Why does Tucker give a darn about Avenatti's rhetoric? And why is he giving the president a completely free pass here? Doesn't make any sense. At the end of the day, it's just false and manufactured outrage that's red meat for his core audience. So then there's a shift, and Carlson starts talking about these sanctions that were just released by the U.S. government on Russia. And he completely ignores the fact that there was unanimous sanctions passed by Congress maybe 6 months ago or something like that. I don't know the exact timeline, where Trump dragged his feet and refused to enforce. And these sanctions had to do with Russian oligarchs and their money. And one could say, well, eventually they got their act together and they enforced these sanctions on these Russian billionaires. But Trump dragged these feet as long as possible. I'm not sure that the sanctions are fully in place yet, even. And that gives time for these massively powerful and wealthy men to maybe switch their money around or to possibly evade the sanctions. So, Tucker brings up that there's a new round of tougher sanctions that came out. Isn't that enough that the president is doing that? Well, it's a step in the right direction, as Avenatti even claims, but it doesn't excuse the fact that there was unanimous sanctions passed last year and the president refused to act on them and was giving cover to these really just criminals in the Russian government. And then, he goes on to switch the topic as he usually does. Carlson switches the topic and he asks Avenatti, are you concerned that Carter Page, an American citizen, that Barack Obama, he he authorized the spying on an American citizen? Again, completely ignoring context. Avenatti was not totally prepared for any of these questions. He was only seemingly prepared to talk about his client, and this was by design of Carlson, of course. So, does it bother you that Obama authorized spying on US citizens? Well, first, I would say it's a misnomer to say that Obama specifically, makes it seem like Obama one, put his foot down and said, "We need to get this Carter Page guy." And he also makes it seem like Obama did that for political motivations and things of that nature. To me, no, it does not. If you look at the facts of the actual case, Carter Page had been on the FBI and CIA's watch for being a potential Russian agent since 2013 or 2014. I mean, it was before Trump even announced that he was running for president, and definitely before Trump had ever met or heard of Carter Page. Uh, so what does is Carlson saying that Obama himself intervened with the FBI and the CIA before Trump was running for office, before Trump knew who Carter Page was, specifically as some sort of shakedown? No, this was backed by our intelligence community's assessments. That's why it was done. It had nothing to do with Donald Trump and everything to do with Carter Page being a potential Russian agent. And more evidence has came out in recent months and indictments that Carter Page, we're reasonably sure, is a Russian agent. So again, more Tucker dishonesty and spin. After a little bit more back and forth between the two, it was clear during this interview and from other things Carlson has said that he wanted to demean both Avenatti and his client Stormy Daniels. He wanted to demean her for her profession, demean him for representing her, things of that nature. And at some point during during this back and forth, Avenatti he calls Carlson out. He's had enough. He wants to get to his client's case. That he said that they had promised him. That's why he was being brought on for. And Avenatti calls out Carlson. He says, if I'm the creepy porn lawyer and you sort of derisively mock Stormy Daniels for being a porn star and this and that, very subtly when he does it, um, why is Trump? Why is he not the creepy porn president? Having sexual intercourse with this adult film actress with a 4 or 5 month old kid at home, a wife at home, and with no condom. So if he's the creepy porn lawyer, why, Tucker claims to be that he represents both sides and that he's honest in his arguments. Why is Trump not the creepy porn president then? After Avenatti makes this point, it's a classic Tucker theme. He shifts. He doesn't shift topic completely, but he sort of shifts the narrative. He says, Carlson says, what's the injury to Stormy Daniels? So, it might have happened, but what's the harm? A man's cheating on his wife, got the kid at home. Tucker's a complete hypocrite. He's calling the guy a creepy porn lawyer, giving the president a pass as usual. Avenatti simply states that they didn't, Cohen and Trump did not adhere to their agreement. They didn't sign the agreement. And more importantly, though, than that, because that you could sort of minimize, I suppose. More importantly than that, though, is, and Carlson asks, what's the injury to the American people? And this was a really stunning part of the interview. Avenatti says, well, the injury to the American people is the president and his fixer broke the law. Campaign finance violations occurred here. And Carlson is apparently completely unaware of this. He says campaign finance violations. Well, yeah, Cohen pled guilty to 2 counts of campaign finance violations. Tucker is supposed to be a journalist and supposed to know the news, and yet he doesn't know this at all. He's completely caught off guard. Corporations, which Cohen used to pay off Stormy and other women on Trump's behalf to help influence an election, they can't make campaign contributions by buying people's silence like that. And then Tucker immediately switches topics. Tucker goes on to accuse Avenatti of exploitation. He accuses Avenatti of exploiting Stormy Daniels for his own personal gain. He also frames Avenatti as her protector, even though he's never claimed to be anything but a lawyer who's trying to do the best that he can by his client. And he says, why are you, Carlson says, why are you wearing expensive suits? Well, your client, her life is stagnating. She has to resort to stripping, working in strip clubs right now. Avenatti makes a good point. He says, this is America. She can do whatever the heck she wants. Uh, I think I've heard Stormy Daniels say that she performs in strip clubs because she wants to. She doesn't have to. She wants to. She could go off and do another career path. She could be a waitress. She could be, I don't know what her educational background or anything might be, but she doesn't have to do anything. She just wrote a book, which I'm sure is going to sell like hotcakes, and she can do what she wants. This is America. And Avenatti is going on TV not to enrich himself, in my opinion. He's going on TV to defend his client the best way that he can in a very public, high profile case. It's no different than what Rudy Giuliani does for Donald Trump. Does Tucker find some sort of issue with Giuliani going on all the networks and blabbering on about Trump and his supposed innocence? No, he doesn't. What is insulting is that Tucker is trying to act as defender and protector of Stormy Daniels, of which he accuses Avenatti of doing. He's projecting. So he goes on to try to play this protector, defender, even though, and saying that he's exposing Avenatti for exploiting his client, even though Stormy Daniels has said she's perfectly satisfied with the job her attorney is doing for her. So what's the issue here? I mean, and also as Carlson tries to make it seem like Avenatti is playing this protector role and isn't her attorney, just trying to do a good job. It, I mean, is Carlson saying that all of her statements about him being a good attorney and doing a good job, that's false? That she can't stand up for herself and make her own mind? I mean, that seems awfully disrespectful and insulting to me, more so than what Avenatti is trying to do, which is just represent the client to the best of his ability, using all the mediums that he can. Tucker then makes this claim that Stormy's life has stalled. Stormy is performing in these depressing strip clubs and gets stuff thrown at her. Never mind that it's money being thrown at her. Gets stuff thrown at her. Well, you're thriving, Mr. Avenatti. You're wearing these expensive suits. You're making all this money. And Avenatti says, what evidence do you have? What do you know about how much money I make or am not making? What do you know about my client's life? About whether she wants to or doesn't want to perform in strip clubs? Where's the evidence? And of course, Carlson has absolutely none. So then, they're going back and forth, and as it's clear that Carlson is trying to demean both Miss Daniels and Mr. Avenatti, yeah, there was a really funny and interesting part of the interview near the end where Avenatti says, "When was the last time you viewed pornography, Tucker?" And Tucker says, "I'm into humiliation porn. I watch it every time I see you on CNN." And then he does this super weird laugh. If you haven't seen the interview yet, please find a non-Fox News source of it on YouTube and just check it out, because he does this weird cackling laugh that just it makes you really feel like he is into humiliation porn essentially. And it was very awkward, and I hope people caught that part. So then the last point I'll make before wrapping this video up is, if you noticed, if you did watch the interview, Carlson doesn't let Avenatti finish any of his answers. This is a common thread for Carlson. He does it all the time. Every time I've watched him, he asks leading questions, and especially for people that aren't willing to be bullied by him, people that are smart, uh, things of that nature, he will just cut you off. He doesn't let Avenatti finish a single thought, and then he cuts him off at the end. He makes a, a provocative point, and then smugly says, "We're out of time, and I won't let you finish," to Avenatti. So this is common. It's typical Fox News Carlson bully ball. So I just thought I would point that out. And if you watch it with that in mind, if you go back and watch the interview with that in mind, you start to notice that he asks all these questions and has this confused face, but he doesn't seem to be that interested in getting the answers. That's for sure. Just to wrap it up, Carlson, he's a pretender of facts. Very little in reality. He tries to act like he is making real intellectual debates about what the American people should care about and all these substantive issues, but there's very little to back it up when you sort of critically analyze it. What it comes down to is Carlson, much like other Fox News coworkers, especially on the opinion side of the channel. There isn't actually there's a distinction between opinion and news hosts on that channel because the opinion hosts stray from the truth so much. Um, he's a troll, plain and simple. I mean, the creepy porn lawyer banner right after he said he didn't want to engage in any name calling, it's all about triggering Democrats, triggering liberals. There's no standards, no journalistic standards, no rhyme or reason other than that. He ambushes his guests. He misleads on what they would discuss. He claims he follows the news and is a journalist. Didn't even know Cohen, Trump's former personal attorney and fixer, pled guilty to 2 counts of campaign finance violations. Had no idea. Then, as I mentioned, the constant interruptions, and I mean constant. He's a blowhard. He talks over people, especially when he knows he's outmatched. When he thinks that he has the upper hand, he sits there with that confused face and tries to just let the other person talk themselves into a circle. And sadly, as I will report, maybe not report, as I will document in later videos, this is not out of the norm for Fox News. And as shocking as this interview was, I'm not even shocked, honestly. This is well within their purview. This is what they do. And it's a shame. It's just a shame that this is where our discourse has gone. Avenatti does well by his client by representing her to the best of his ability. Based on no facts at all, Tucker makes claims about Stormy's life stalling while Avenatti thrives. He makes that claim. And how is that? There's no substance. It's just suggestions. It's just innuendo. It's not fact-based. He claims, I know the facts. He doesn't know the facts. And it's just so abundantly clear. And this interview, I think, definitely showcased that. So thank you for watching. Please hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at JasonBPolitics. I'm signing off for now. There will be more videos to come. Thank you for watching.